my great honor. Peg Schaefer is the chairman of the Somerset County Dems. I just started, I was elected chair, what, 7 or 8 months ago. And when I first showed up to the county meeting, I was floored, because there's so much immense, personal, intimate knowledge of the county in the people around that table. And Peg's the best of them all. And every single time I get to go there, I learn an immense amount. It is my honor to introduce Peg Schaefer.
Watch out, Somerset County. We are poised to take our seat at the table in this county. We have currently 38 Democratic elected officials. But this year, we've got a whole bunch more opportunity to take control and to show them what good Democratic leadership is all about. So we're here tonight to hear from a friend to the county. And unfortunately, because we have so few elected Democrats at the statewide level, in this county. We have a couple of districts that border us. We've got a really good senator in North Plainfield. We've got Senator Smith's doing a great job for us in Franklin. And we've got in Pendra and Assemblyman Egan. But in the core, in the center of the state, we don't have anybody representing the Democratic ideals in Trenton. So we have to depend upon our friends outside the county. We have to depend upon people like Senator Buono, who is really making her mark and doing what we can't do. She's protecting our kids from the Republican onslaught. She's protecting our health. She's protecting our dollars. But we need to get somebody down there to help her out. In the meantime, she's been distinguishing herself as a whole bunch of firsts. She's certainly the first majority leader, female majority leader in the state. And in order to get there, she had a bunch of other firsts. She was the first female chair of the Budget Committee. And she heads the Democratic caucus, I guess. In any event, I've had the pleasure of knowing the senator for some period of time. She's also a really cool lady. She's really smart. She's really fun. And more importantly, she's willing to fight that fat guy on our behalf. And without much more, let me just tell you, before she comes up here, there's a St. Patty's Day party run by the county in downtown Somerville. There's a restaurant that's changing its name for the Somerset County Democrats. That's how important we are. They're waiting. They know we're coming. They're changing the name to Over. And so we expect to see all you guys there. We're going to make sure the Somerville people are there. The Somerville people every year say they can't come to our St. Patty's Day party because they're too drunk and they don't want to drive. So now we're having a party where they can walk to the location. With that said, it's my honor to introduce Senator Buono.
Everyone, I am just floored by this crowd. This is great. Thank you for all coming out. And thank you for inviting me. And in particular, I have to thank Dave Ferdinand for extending his hand to me. You know how this first started out. Dave called the office, or he had somebody call my office and ask for me to come and talk to the Township committee in Bernard's Township, and I said, sure. And then Peg caught wind of it, and she said, no, there's not going to be enough people there. And so she extended it to the county, and so I want to say, good evening, Somerset County Dems, but I understand there may be, it was a public meeting, it was advertised, so if there are any Somerset County Republicans or unaffiliated, welcome as well. I welcome you as the Senate Majority Leader. And before I start, I wanted to just recognize your chair, because you know her, and so I don't know if you can kind of compare her to the rest of the chairs in the state, but let me tell you something. She is one of the most innovative, creative, tenacious county chairs in the state of New Jersey, and the rest of the chairs have a lot to learn from her. I always tell you that, right, Peg? So I think we should give her a round of applause. I know it's a grueling job as county chair, and it's often a very thankless job, so we want to thank you for growing and sustaining the Democratic Party in Somerset County. I'd also like to take a moment to thank all of the elected officials, those who are currently serving, those who have served in the past, and those who are thinking of running in November. I know Bonnie Deal is thinking of running in, there she is, Bonnie, good job. It takes a lot of courage to run for public office in this day and age, in this day and age of brass knuckle politics, just when you think it's gotten as bad as it can get, it gets worse. So you really have to think at least twice before you voluntarily, allow yourself to step into that public domain and undergo that scrutiny and ultimately criticism eventually. If you stay long enough, you will be criticized, that I will tell you. But that shouldn't dissuade you, Bonnie. Definitely shouldn't dissuade you. Being a Democrat, let's talk about that a little. Being a Democrat has always been the same. Being a Democrat, even during this time of the Christie chaos and incivility, has always been about being responsible and taking responsibility. It's understanding that while we are responsible for our own actions, we are also responsible to one another. The former governor, Mario Cuomo, has put it eloquently. In the past, he said that the people are entitled to all the government they need, but only the government they need. In other words, it's a notion that government it really shouldn't solve, it's not intended to solve every conceivable social ill. But what government is people coming together to do for themselves collectively what they otherwise could not do for themselves individually, right? A case in point. As you may recall, a couple of years ago, we had this financial meltdown that we're still feeling the effects of. I think that is a prime example of where, because government failed to act, government failed to regulate, that this precipitated the worst financial crisis in modern history. And Ben Bernanke has actually said that it rivals the Great Depression. And recently you probably have read that there is the results of a federal investigation, and the reports have said that indeed this debacle could have been avoided, and that it was caused by widespread failure of government regulation, corporate mismanagement, and a heedless risk-taking on Wall Street. Now, to be fair, the report lays the blame at the doorstep of both political parties, right? I mean, it spanned this kind of behavior and this tolerance of heedless risk-taking by Wall Street. It spanned several administrations. So what really surprised me then is that the Republicans from Washington to Trenton are running away from their responsibility, that their actions, that their ill-thought-out tax cuts, that this actually precipitated the crisis. I mean, they actually asked for a minority report, which sort of amazed me. But you know what? We're not here tonight to discuss the shortcomings of the Republican Party. It would be easy to. I hope there's no... and we might chuckle a little and, laugh a little. It might make us feel good for the moment. But the truth is, it would not really bring us forward. We would not move forward as a party, as a people. And I think it would be tragic if we allowed the discourse in Trenton to devolve to the partisan bickering that we hear in Washington. If we allowed our governor to define us in such a way that we don't have rational debate. This is a governor that tries to stifle debate by cowing people into submission, by name-calling, by scapegoating, by demonizing, and you know what? I think we're better than that. You see, this governor sees advantage in turning people against one another, and that's very sad. But the truth is, with all of his bravado and bluster, he really lacks courage. He lacks the vision and leadership that it takes to bring people together, to hammer out real solutions to pressing problems. We cannot allow him to marginalize us and intimidate us by stifling debate, by name-calling, and by cowing people into submission. I will not be cowed. You should not be either. Because if we allow this governor to stifle debate, then that strikes at the very core, the very heart and soul of democracy, doesn't it? And if we allow that to go unchallenged, then we're not being leaders. And we don't deserve to hold the positions that you have given us in Trenton or in Washington. And that's why it's time. It's time for our party and unaffiliated and Republicans as well to stand together and to demand civility and to share responsibility, right? And that all begins, this is a great group, and that all begins with making a commitment to our public schools. Public schools. I grew up in a family, didn't have a lot of money, had family that really, pushed me. You better do well or else. That was the mantra. And if I didn't have a good public school system in Essex County where I grew up, and if I didn't have the opportunity to go to good public institutions of higher learning, Montclair State and then Rutgers Law School, I wouldn't be here standing before you today, and I know it. And we want that for our kids because public schools are the great equalizer, aren't they? Public schools are the foundation of our democracy. Strong public schools are what build strong communities. Strong public schools raise standards, raise expectations, create hope, and ultimately keep us on the cutting edge of our nation in education. But making a mockery of the teaching profession and pretending that our schools, our public schools, are the problem instead of the solution has it backwards as far as I'm concerned. This governor says he's not demonizing teachers, just the union. But you talk to teachers, and they don't think that. They're very demoralized, and it's terrible what he has done. Yes, they are. Yeah. Of course we can improve our public schools. We can always improve, right? But you don't build better public schools and stronger public schools by abandoning them. And you don't build stronger public schools by defunding and disinvesting in them. And you don't build stronger public schools by blaming Washington for incompetence in Trenton. I couldn't resist. You all know how you build stronger public schools by accepting responsibility and not avoiding it. And by the way, while we're talking about accepting responsibility, let's talk a little bit about fiscal responsibility, shall we? Now, I was chair of the Budget Committee during two of the most trying years in the state's modern history. I mean, we actually, in 2008 and 2009, we actually were in free fall. Our revenues were literally in free fall. Excuse me. And if you talk to the numbers crunchers at OLS, the Office of Legislative Services, they will tell you that they were in a panic. Nobody knew where it was going to stop. But what we were able to do without Governor Christie is we were able to stem the flow. We were able to cut where we needed to cut. We were able, and at the same time, we were able to still preserve our school funding formula, which I am proud to have been the sponsor of in the Senate, the only sponsor, by the way, because we were able, even though we had to reduce some of the funding, we still distributed funding for 2 years in a row in a much more equitable fashion than had been done before. So when the governor tells people that that funding formula is terrible because it pits the suburbs against the cities, that it sends more money from the suburbs to the city, that's a lie. That's not true. It just isn't. And so what I will say is that I know something about belt tightening. And when you talk about belt tightening and you go line item by line item in the budget, you figure out, you examine how much each program costs. But at the same time, you examine how much a program saves. how much a program creates, like women's health funding. As you all know, the governor zeroed that out. And we all know that for every dollar spent, you were going to leverage $9 from the federal government. I mean, the list goes on, and I'd be happy to ask questions. I'm not going to go on with the budget, but I'll ask whatever questions you have. But let me say this. I have learned more about how to be a public servant, by being a mother than any of the time I've spent in Trenton. I bet a lot of people in this room can agree with that. Having raised 6 children, I've had more than ample opportunity to have, I only gave birth to 4, 2 stepdaughters, but having raised 6 children, I've had more than a few opportunities to have conversations about taking responsibility for your actions and by treating one another with respect and civility. And so I believe that as a public servant, it is my job to take responsibility for my actions and to be responsible to my constituents. And so it is we as public servants must have the courage of our convictions and must have the political will to stand up and take a stand when the circumstances call for it. And what that means is having a debate on the issues. Having a rational, meaningful debate is not the same thing as scapegoating and finger pointing. And so what have I learned from being in Trenton under the Christie chaos and the Christie period of incivility for a little over a year? It seems like much longer than that. Well, you can say one thing I've learned is that, bullying may be a character flaw, but it shouldn't be a governing philosophy. And unfortunately, we've seen that. And what is the perfect antidote to bullying? Civility, right? And being civil is not a sign of weakness. And being a bully does not equate with strength. And what's happened in Trenton is because this incivility has permeated the atmosphere, it has made compromise that much more difficult to reach. It has made finding a common ground very, very difficult. And it has created an atmosphere where YouTube moments are more important than the idea that you and I are in this together. So I think it's time. It's time for Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliates to come together and to demand that we want civility in Trenton. We need civility to accomplish our objectives together, and we can do that by sitting down at a table together and discussing the issues. And only by doing that will we begin to regain the trust of our neighbors, our friends, and after all, those are our voters. So thank you all, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Here, thank you very much. I'm going to steal the senator just for 2 seconds. I know that after hearing you had 6 kids and all you did in politics, I think the first question everybody has in their mind is, do you have some sort of a time machine or other gadget that allows you to know? Actually, I agree that things are less civil now than they ever were. Do you want to talk for just a second about why you think that's the case?
Oh, I thought I did, but
well, not just here in New Jersey, but all over the country. It's absolutely incivil right now. Do you have a second? Do you have any ideas about why that's the case?
Well, I know why it is in New Jersey. I think that there's a lot of reasons. The 24-hour news cycle people attribute it to. I think that at least in New Jersey, before, and I'm not attributing it to one individual, but it is the governor of the state of New Jersey, and I can tell you what it was like before Governor Christie. And the Democrats and the Republicans in the state Senate worked very well together. In fact, we had a number of pretty controversial measures that we put together as a bipartisan coalition, and Governor Corzine at the time didn't support it, so we had some reforms that we moved through. But we worked very well, and I think the governor is very polarizing. And he makes it really I'll give you an example. After his first speech last year was to freeze reserve funds in school budgets that had already been approved the year before. And it wasn't so much the substance. I mean, that was objectionable. Unfortunately, the court found that it was permissible legally. But what I found objectionable was how the governor, he just made it, we were his political punchline. During the speech, he was saying, oh, I can already hear the partisan cackling out in the hallway, protectors of the status quo. And the truth is, I had met with the governor for 2.5 hours during his transition period, and I thought we agreed on a lot of things. I thought we were going to be able to work together. I really did. And then he gave that first speech, and it was like, what's going on here? And I think a lot of us felt that way because, I didn't agree with everything. You probably know, you know me anyway, Peg. I'm going to tell you how I feel. If I think you're wrong, I will tell you. You may not agree with me, but at least I'm going to be honest and frank, and I have a basis for my opinion. And John Corzine and I didn't agree on everything. On early retirement, we didn't agree on, and I was the budget chair, so we kind of bumped heads. But he would, you get over it. This is politics. People have different opinions, and you work together, and you try and reach a common ground. That's how you do it. That's how it's done. This governor doesn't get that. I'm not sure why. I don't know, but it's clearly there's going to be gridlock in Trent, unfortunately, I think.
Well, right to that, just a quick civics question. People talk about strong and weak governorships in states. In New Jersey, is it a strong or weak governorship, and why?
Is that a rhetorical question?
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you, that was nice. We have the strongest governorship in the nation, and I don't think we realized how strong it was until this governor decided to really use all the power of his position, and I think to our detriment in that we could talk about the effect on the legislature, the effect on the judiciary. I'm a lawyer and I'm not practicing, but this governor has unfortunately exercised his authority to the detriment of both of those other branches of government and undermined their independence and certainly the integrity of the judiciary by creating a political litmus test. We have one of the most highly respected benches in the nation, and unfortunately this governor is holding it hostage. And as you know, we have one vacancy, and now we have one judge that says he's going to vote on it when he feels like it, and he's not going to vote when he doesn't feel like it, and that's just wrong. So this governor also has a line item veto, which even the President of the United States doesn't have when you get a budget. Another thing I found out, I had no idea the extent of the governor's power when it came to CBing a bill, conditionally vetoing a bill. You can veto a bill totally, or you can change a bill and send it back to the legislature. If the legislature doesn't agree with it, we have to override it by 2/3 majority. I found out that the governor can essentially rewrite an entire bill completely. And he's done that on a few occasions, and I'll give you one example. There was discussion for a while about reforming the unemployment insurance fund. As you know, we had to increase the tax on employers. It was artificially held back for a number of years, and we had to bump it up, I think, 1 or 2 schedules, but we didn't, under the law, it really should have been up to, I think, Schedule F, and we did it to B or C. And in the course of the discussions over that, the governor wanted to reform unemployment insurance. And at a time like this, when more and more people are out of work, and out of work for longer extended periods of time, he actually talked about cutting weekly benefits. And it was a battle. It was a battle, but we won that before the legislation was passed because we got the federal government, the Department of Labor, to actually send a letter saying that if, in fact, we passed that would jeopardize any federal extended unemployment benefits that we were receiving. So we were able to stop that. But there was also talk about, there's something called, if you get laid off, and you get laid off for misconduct, gross misconduct, then you are unable to receive unemployment benefits. The governor wanted to create a separate category of misconduct and severe misconduct. And I said no. I mean, there was discussion. I said no. So that didn't go in the bill. The CV comes back, and it's in the CV. He just did it anyway. And that's not the worst of it. The worst of it is that the CV was worded, having a background in law, I mean, it really does help. I mean, you read the CV and it's completely open-ended. It says, if you are laid off from, paraphrasing obviously, from work for example, including, and this is in the CV, including but not limited to, so it gave you 2 or 3 examples, so it was completely open-ended. If you are laid off for being absent or being sick, and you get written notice from your employer, you can be deprived of receiving unemployment benefits. And that passed the New Jersey legislature. I was one of 4 votes to vote to override the governor's conditional veto in the Senate. Now, I don't know what happened in the Assembly, but that's the kind of thing that's going on. And so I go out and I try and talk to people. That's why I wanted to come and just talk to you folks. And that's the only way you get people, because everybody's still in a bit of a panic. If not a panic, everybody's still concerned about their livelihood and where they're going to, some people where they're going to get their next meals, others how they're going to pay their mortgage or get their kid through college. And so it's important to kind of refocus people, which is why I had an education forum a few weeks ago. And the reason I had that, we had it in Edison, and it was to give parents, really, we didn't want, you know, we didn't have a lot of administrators, no elected officials, but we wanted parents and students to come and tell us what the impact of the governor's cuts had in the real world. And the reason, you know, everybody thinks I have an ulterior motive. Oh, you just want to get it out there and just complain and slam the governor. Well, that really isn't the case. In October, in my town where I live, Metuchen, we have a country fair, and it draws from fairly wide area. I had people, for the first time ever, and I have a booth every year, I had parents, a couple teachers, but mostly parents and students, coming up to my booth in a panic because they saw what the governor's cuts were doing to their schools. They were talking about the class size, they were talking about in Edison, and they took the freeze, they took the pay freeze. A lot of my towns did, and it did. As the governor said it was going to avert cuts, and it obviously didn't. All-day kindergarten, they had 60 after-school or extracurricular activities, and they had to cut them. I think they have 4 now. And as you all know, that's very important to round out your child's education and enhances their opportunity of getting into a university or a college. So that's why I had it, and I can tell you it was an eye-opener for me. So it's really hard getting people to focus on this, but I'm really glad you all came out, because I think we need you out there. We need people, you know, the governor knows that people care, and that's really our only hope. I believe democracy works. And so that's why, you know, we're out here tonight. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, let them know how this budget and the governor's policies are affecting you in your everyday life, whether it's increased train fare or, you know, in so many, a multiplicity of ways.
Okay, let's do some questions. 2 rules of politeness. Please wait for the microphone to get to you so everybody can hear. And also, a question has a question in it. It usually takes about 30 seconds or so. And so we'll try to watch that. Let's see, we have Joe and Greg. Let's get right down here with the first. Joe, if we could get right down here. Here, let's wait. I'm so sorry. Wait for the mic so everybody can hear you.
I'm a state worker, and when we had a rally in Trenton in, I think it was March, Christy said, oh, I'm not going to listen to them. It's nice that they had a good time. My question is you say that we should, you know, Christy will have to let Christy know about the problems. Do you think he's actually going to listen to us?
Well, I think the question is, you think that she's a public worker, and I think that this governor really, honestly, with respect to public workers, I think it's going to be a tough year ahead. You have your contracts up for renewal.
I was really questioning.
No, I know.
I'm talking to Christy.
Well, it really depends who you are. I think he's more receptive to people who aren't public employees, that aren't teachers, and aren't, you know, Democrats for that matter. I mean, it's very difficult to have a working relationship with him, and I don't say that to be flip. It's accurate. So, but it is unfortunate.
Thank you very much. I'm from Somerville. I'm a teacher. I'm a union member. I wonder, what are other state senators saying while Governor Christie is running around the country stumping for himself? I'm just curious what the buzz is around the Senate.
Well, I'll tell you what I said when I heard he was in Illinois, and I read, actually, I can't take the credit for this, it was a comment. My kids always tell me not to read the comments because they're always nasty. But this one was actually pretty funny, and it was commenting on Christie's visit to Illinois, and it said, "Quick, quick, lock the state, pretend we're not home, maybe Illinois will keep it." I thought that was pretty funny. But nobody's really, we're so caught up in really the issues of the day, whether it's, the pension reforms that or tenure. I mean, whether, now this is a year of education reform. I am so distraught by what is happening to public education. I really think that this governor, and the reason I'm not answering you directly is because there's not a lot of talk about it right now. There was during the election, and I actually wrote an op-ed on it. But right now, we're so caught up in trying to stem the damage to our public schools. I'm very concerned. The voucher bill is of great concern to me. The charter school bill, I believe there's a role for charter schools, but I can tell you in high-performing districts that I represent, like East Brunswick and Metuchen and Edison, the municipalities don't want the charter schools because the money will follow the child. And so I have a bill, Senator Turner has a bill, and I signed on as a co-prime sponsor. And what that bill requires is before a charter school is approved, because as you know that there's a movement to really expand charter schools, to expand the authorizing authority to colleges and universities beyond the Department of Education, which it is now. So it would require that the town be able to vote on it, to have a ballot initiative, and that the populace in the town votes before a charter school is allowed. And I know in my district, people are very pleased about that. I can't vote for any expansion of charter schools without that in it, and I've been very clear.
Well, let me just break in to say that Bernard's Township was able to save full-day kindergarten. I had someone here who was integral in that. So very,
stand up, really, you're
great job. Really, the work was astounding. If everybody knew the story and how much money they raised in such an incredibly short time. Good work. Congratulations. Good. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Steve Levine from Franklin Township. I'm never accused of needing a microphone. So,
Me either. Having 6 kids, I really don't need it.
Exactly. Senator Buono, what are you doing to convince the people that are in favor of the scholarship and the vouchers bill and all that the New Jersey Constitution, Article 8, Taxation and Finance, says that the legislature is supposed to provide for a thorough and efficient system of free public schools, and that vouchers and charter schools and parochial schools and all that thing are not public schools, and therefore our tax money cannot be used to pay for them. What are you doing to convince
I'm so sorry that you don't know that. Oh my God, that's not a good sign. I was on the front, I don't know, how would you know what I'm doing? I was on the front page of the Star Ledger saying, well, that's good. Okay, good. Yeah. I'm doing everything I can. Let me tell you, I was talking to some of the folks beforehand, and there is a group, I'm going to lead up to my answer. A group of women, primarily women, and they formed a grassroots group called SOS, Save Our Schools. And it's really around the issue of vouchers and charter schools as well. We have one in Metuchen, in East Brunswick, in Princeton, in Montclair, and Highland Park, all that area of the state. I don't know if you have any here, but I know Christina from my office can probably give you their website. And I know that they're looking for real members. And let me tell you something. I can get up there and whatever, say what, and they'll sound being partisan, or I'm liberal, or I don't know, whatever. But when a group of parents gets up there and says it, let me tell you, that has an impact. So I'm doing everything I can. We're actually going to East Brunswick, which is one of my school districts. They received a blue ribbon designation from the federal government, and we're doing a rally there with SOS. So it really has to be grassroots. What I'm doing, I'm doing everything I can as a legislator. I'm on the committee, I'm on the budget committee, and I questioned Senators Lesniak and Kane about it, and I thought I was pretty effective. I did an op-ed, I'm out there as much as I can, but for everything I do, every hit I get online, it pales in comparison to what you, and I don't want to give you more work, but I'm telling you, that'll have an effect.
Do you want to do one more?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe, you want to?
Hi, I'm Lisa Winter. I'm from Basking Ridge, and I'm a parent, and I was on the Board of Ed for 6 years. And I'm a huge fan of yours, because I'm a huge fan of the funding formula of 2008. And I just want to say, you know, I was on the board at the time. It was the first time we got an increase in aid in over 10 years.
My district too.
And it was huge. We got a 20% increase that first year.
Edison too. And you're supposed to get it for 10 years?
Well, yeah.
You're supposed to get it for 10 years.
We got
right?
like 10% increase the next year, 5% the next year. But to get an increase, we had had steady state aid for 10 years, which is essentially a decrease. And we got it in recognition of the fact that we're a low-cost district. And I loved that the formula built in that below adequacy estimation, which said that if you are below adequate, then you need more help from the state. We had been cutting and cutting because the cap was so tough on our district, because we're so low cost, the cap was less, and we didn't have anything to cut. So anyway, I just want to say I'm a big fan of that, and I wonder if you could speak to, I don't understand why we're not using the funding formula. I understand there's less money because there's less revenue. I don't understand why we don't use the funding formula to distribute that less money. And I wonder if you could speak to whether there's support in the Senate to really push for keeping it. It's the best thing. It passed the Supreme Court. It got rid of the Abbott, designations, which means it's fair to everybody. I can't imagine going back.
I have to tell you, I was in the Assembly for 7 years before I was elected to the Senate. And for every one of those 7 years, I've been fighting for a fair school funding formula because my district is suburban. And when we finally passed that legislation, it was funny, nobody wanted to support it in the Senate because everybody was a little nervous, well, what does it really do? But we were able to get a bipartisan group to support it. Senator Kaine and a number of the other senators came around. I don't know why they weren't in support of it initially, because it helped their districts. It was odd. But then we actually increased the percentage of reimbursement for special ed costs, which was a huge boom. And you don't know this, but at the very end, we would have had to do an emergency, which means if you amend the bill, if you change it when you're about to vote for it on the floor, you have to get 2/3 of the legislative body to say you can do that, and we knew we couldn't. So instead of getting that amendment in there that we got the Republican votes for, that increased the percentage of special ed funding even higher than we had already increased, we made it even higher. It never was incorporated into the statute. So every year, it has to be in the budget separately from the bill. And you have no idea how Governor Corzine we had a big fight over this because he wanted it out to cut the budget. I said, do you know what the suburbs are going to do to you if you reduce that? I don't think he got that. And so we kept it in that year. But then with this governor, I asked Brett Schundler, who actually isn't a bad guy in many ways. I voted for him when he came before the Senate to have him be the education commissioner, because even though I knew we disagreed on just about every piece of education policy, I knew he was a person of character and integrity, and I knew he would do the right thing for the kids of New Jersey, and I said that on the floor of the Senate when I voted to confirm him as education commissioner. But when he came before the budget committee, I wasn't chair at that point, but I asked him point blank. I said, why did you, first of all, you cut funding for every school, every traditional public school. The only schools at state level were what? Charters. And he had no explanation for that. No explanation. So I asked him the question, why are you doing this? You're walking away from our school funding formula. And he didn't really have an answer. But that's why we're back in court. And so we don't really know what the Supreme Court's going to do. Some people are saying, and again, it's just speculation, some people are saying that, because the governor said he's going to come up with a new funding formula. Well, you know how long it took, the Corzine amendment, it took years, and it put out a lot of work and put into it. So the only thing we're figuring he can do and call it a new funding formula because there's nobody unless he has some other group outside of the Department of Education that's working on it, some 501c3 organization that's funded, I don't know, then I don't know about it. But people are thinking that maybe he'll fund every child the same. And I don't think that would stand constitutional muster, except he may say that, well, I'm doing vouchers, I'm doing charter schools. So I still don't think it'll pass constitutional muster, but we're all, you can tell we're all anxious. We have all of our scenarios, and we should know in about a month or so. One more. This is fun. I'm sorry I have to go to, I'm going to have people mad at me, but oh God.
Good, Joe.
I've been having, I don't know why the state can't fund every student the same. I think every student should be treated equally when it comes to state funding, and the Constitution requires it. It was done before. It's been in the Constitution since 1844. It was done under the law of 1871. It was done all the way up. I tried to get a message to you over at your meeting there. And that is in the Constitution. I think the court have a hard time finding it unconstitutional because it's in there. In the exact words, it shall be used for the equal benefit of all the students, all the people in the state of New Jersey. And after that was put in, they used to fund on an equal per pupil basis. So I think I think we ought to look at that. Until
Abbott? They did that until when?
I think, I know it kept on in 1892.
Well, I really wish I had more time. I just want to wrap up by saying this, because I'm a lawyer. I actually teach a seminar in law and public policy at Rutgers Law School. If there's any Republicans in the room, I'm not getting paid, so I can save you time. But so I'm doing a lot of legal work now. It's fascinating. I forgot how much I enjoy the law, and it's really fascinating how much the Constitution seems to require or not require and is changed by either legislation or court decision. Let me give you an example real quick. Eminent domain. And I see Phil Kramer there. He's probably going to start. But the Constitution says that the government can take property for private development with just compensation, but in the Constitution it says it has to be blighted. Well, what did the legislature do in 1992? They passed a statute that essentially there's no blight. I mean, the Kelo decision, even though it should, under the Constitution, if you just look at the Constitution, Kelo would not be allowed, because Kelo allowed eminent domain, a taking of a home, for a private home, and it didn't have to be blighted, just to build condos. Now, under our Constitution, you can't do that, but there's legislation. In fact, we just had a bill up, Phil, in the Senate that really reformed it and made it a lot tighter, and because there's a lot of abuses in eminent domain. So it's unfortunate that people do act in violation of.
I'll talk to you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much. This has been wonderful.
Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Barbara Buono. Thank you so much for joining us. Great job.